Rallies are being held around the world calling for international action in Burma. Hundreds turned out in Melbourne and Sydney as part of the Global Day of Action, which is being mirrored in 24 other locations across the globe. Members of Australia's Burmese community and human rights organisations marched in a show of solidarity for detained protesters in Burma. But first, key Western members in the United Nations Security Council have condemned Burma's military regime's violent crackdown on anti-government protests. They issued a draft statement this afternoon after UN envoy Ibrahim Gambari told the generals that their actions could have serious international repercussions. The warning came as the regime released the first video footage of pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi in 4 years.
It's army green, not saffron-coloured robes that continue to dominate the streets of Rangoon. Burma's military regime claims that peace has been restored, but fears remain for thousands still missing. And raids on homes and monasteries, which began more than a week ago, are said to be continuing. The claim put to the United Nations by its envoy after his 4-day mission to Burma.
Of great concern to the United Nations and the international community are the continuing and disturbing reports of abuses being committed by security and non-uniform elements, particularly at night during curfew, including raids on private homes, beatings, arbitrary arrests and disappearances.
A disturbing claim for those who came to support the monks and protesters who braved the bullets and batons last week. Now new images have emerged of the regime's violent crackdown that will only pile more pressure on the generals. They've released rare footage of their most famous political prisoner, Aung San Suu Kyi, seen here meeting Mr Gambari in Rangoon. The world has hardly seen anything of the pro-democracy leader for 4 years. And while her face may not show it, the UN envoy says she's encouraged by the prospect of talks with the generals to move the country forward. But some fear progress will be slow.
It's nonsense. On one hand, we are talking about dialogue and reconciliation, and on the other hand, people are being killed, being tortured, being arrested.
By the government's own account, its crackdown claimed up to 12 lives. Dozens more were wounded, and it says about 2,000 people were arrested. Dissident groups say 200 people were killed and 6,000 people were captured, many of whom they fear are still missing. The UN chief is calling for all political prisoners to be freed and has condemned the use of violence.
The use of force against peaceful demonstrators is abhorrent and unacceptable.
Mr Gambari says there's consensus in the Security Council that the status quo in Burma is unacceptable, but the US is fast losing patience.
If the Burmese regime does not respond constructively to the demands of the international community in a timely manner, the United States is prepared to introduce a resolution in the Security Council imposing sanctions.
China and Russia remain cautious. The key veto-wielding powers remain opposed to Security Council action against Burma. Ashley Neame, World News Australia.